Hello YouTube and welcome to the next video in the route learning series for Train Simulator. On today's journey we're going to be driving a Class 444 operated by South West Trains on the Portsmouth Direct Line from Woking to Portsmouth Harbour. This is a distance of around 50¼ miles and we'll be calling at Guildford, Haslemere, Petersfield, Havant, Fratton, Portsmouth and Southsea and Portsmouth Harbour. Our attraction for the journey today is a Class 444, which was built by Siemens and has been in service since 2004. It's part of the Desiro family of units, and they operate in 5-car train sets. A total of 45 of these trains were built, with a capacity of 299 standard class passengers and 35 first class passengers per 5-coach train. The maximum speed of this train is 100 miles per hour, though we'll only get up to 90 miles per hour on the journey today. The total weight is 227 tonnes, and the power output is 2,700 horsepower. The cab of the Class 444 is fairly simple. Over here we have the power handle, which operates with 5 steps of power from off up to max, which is step 5, and with the braking it's actually smooth rather than notched, so instead of having a stepped brake where you go step 1 and step 2, you can move this much more smoothly between the steps, and as you can see at the top of the screen what this is doing on the brake gauge. So it allows for much more precise brake application than a stepped brake. So there we have the brake gauge and the speedometer. And then just to the right of the speedometer we have a braking and driving gauge. If the gauge is pointing to the right, the train is accelerating and has power on, and if it's pointing to the left, the train is braking. And the further it points in each direction, the more the train is accelerating or decelerating. Departing from Woking, the starting speed limit is 90 miles per hour, though the speed limit quickly goes down to 60 and then 40 miles per hour as we turn off on the junction away from the main line towards Guildford. And we've got about 6¼ miles to go to the first stop, which is Guildford. We now have a single yellow signal with a feather going left to show us that we're turning onto the Guildford branch. Now going to brake for the 40 mile per hour speed limit. And as you can see, the speed limit is 40 miles per hour around here, though it quickly goes up to 90 miles per hour. We're now passing the 90 board. But as you remember, the last signal was single yellow, so we have to assume the next signal is red until we can see otherwise. We can accelerate to 90 as we pass the 15 board pointing left that we just passed, and we can now see that the next signal ahead is green. Therefore we can accelerate up to the 90 mile per hour speed limit. Coming around this curve, we're on a falling gradient of 1 in 152. Though in a short distance the gradient will change and we will start to climb on a gradient of 1 in 110. You can now see a significant gradient change ahead as we go from descending to climbing. Then we'll now climb at 1 in 110 all the way to Worplesdon Station, which is the next station we'll pass through and is just coming up. As we pass through Warples, then the gradient levels out a bit, so I've cut power to step 3 to ensure that we don't break the 90 mph speed limit. As we reach the overbridge just coming up, we'll be climbing again at a gradient of 1 in 111. And as soon as we start to climb, we need to apply full power to ensure that we don't lose speed. You can now see another significant gradient change coming up as we go from climbing to descending. We were climbing at 1 in 111 and we're now descending at 1 in 116. So I've shut the power off to neutral to let the train coast. We now have a warning for a speed reduction to 50 mph just before Guildford station. It's just under a mile from the limit and the warning board was just over a mile to the station. We'll brake for the 50 speed limit on this left-hand curve just coming up. Now that we're on the curve, we'll go to number 2 on the brake gauge, and that should slow us down nicely for the 50 mph speed limit. Entering the platform here at Guildford, there is no clear 5-car stop sign. So for the stopping point we need to stop beyond the 4-car stop sign, and I'll try and stop by the station sign which says Guildford on it, just coming up on the left, just before the passenger information board. Arrival at Guildford. As we depart from Guildford, do note that the signal at the end of the platform is showing a double yellow aspect, so we do need to drive with caution. And as you can see, the speed limit is now down to 25 mph. As we reach 25 mph, I'm going to shut off power now and let the train coast. And as we enter this tunnel here, the speed limit is going up to 60 mph. There is no clear landmark to tell you where to accelerate, so it is a bit of a guessing game. I normally try and accelerate around 10 to 15 seconds after entering the tunnel. And now going to accelerate up to the 60 mph speed limit, while bearing in mind that these signals could be against us, and in fact you can see just after the end of the tunnel that the signal ahead is showing a yellow aspect. At this point we can't see if it's a single yellow or a double yellow, so we're going to assume it's a single until we can see otherwise. As we reach 50 miles per hour. I'm now going to shut off power and coast. And just ahead you can see one of the bugs that I was talking about with this route, unfortunately. However, there's only a couple of minor bugs with this route, and I still think it's a vast improvement over the original. You can see we've now got a single yellow signal, and the speed limit has gone up to 70 miles per hour. And I'm now braking for the red signal that you can see just up ahead. Now that the signal has cleared, we can accelerate up to the 70 mile per hour speed limit, which will shortly be going up to 85. The line going off to the left is the line towards Redhill and Gatwick Airport. And trains that use this line are operated by First Great Western, running from Redhill and Gatwick Airport over to Reading. We've now passed the 85 mile per hour speed limit. And we do need to take note of the signals after the junction that we've just passed. So this is the first signal coming up. At the third signal after the junction, there is a drop in speed limit down to 70 miles per hour, which doesn't have a warning board, so we do need to bear that in mind. We're now passing the second signal after the junction, so we do need to bear in mind that we do need to slow down for a 70 mile per hour speed limit at the next signal. And you can just see that in the distance, you can just see a green light there. So I'm now going to shut off power and coast, and as we get close to the signal I will apply light braking just to slow us down. We're now going through Farncombe Station. We now have a warning for a drop in speed limit down to 60 miles per hour, which is half a mile from the warning. So we're going to continue to allow the train to coast and apply light braking on this left-hand curve here. We're now going through Godalming. The speed limit is now going up to 75 miles per hour, and we're clear to accelerate at the rear of the signal on the opposite track, so you can now see the rear of the signal there. So I'm now going to go up into full power. As we round this curve, we're now climbing on a gradient of 1 in 150. And the speed limit is now going to be going up to 80 miles per hour. As we get close to the 80 mph speed limit, I'm now reducing power to ensure that we don't break the limit. We're now going through Milford Station and the speed limit has now gone up to 85 mph. So I'm once again applying power to accelerate towards the limit. On this left-hand curve here we now have a steep gradient change and we're now going to start climbing at 1 in 82, so I've applied full power to try and ensure that we don't lose too much speed. You can see there's now another steep gradient change, and in fact we're now going to be going down at 1 in 110, so I've just cut off power completely. And we're now going through Whitley Station, which is the last station before Haslemere. You can now see another steep gradient change just ahead. From here on we will be climbing all of the way to Haslemere on a gradient as steep as 1 in 80. I've now applied full power to ensure that we don't lose too much speed. If the speed does get up to 85 mph, I'll briefly shut off power to let the train slow down just slightly. I have just reduced power by 1 step, as I felt that the speed was climbing just slightly too much. As the speed drops off towards 80 mph, I will reapply full power once again. As we pass the Whistleboard, then the underbridge, then the AWS that we just passed, we now know that we're 1 3/4 miles from the stop at Haslemere. Our braking point for Haslemere will be on this next right-hand curve. There will be a bridge that will come into view, an arched over bridge. You can now see that coming into view. Just as we get a little closer to that on the sharper part of the curve, I'm now going to shut off power, and now I'm going to brake up to number 2 on the brake gauge. The uphill gradient will help us slow down a lot quicker than we usually would. And you can now see the platform at Haslemere coming into view. I've reduced the braking slightly because we're slowing down just a little too much. The stop at Haslemere is in fact on an uphill gradient. And the stopping point here, again, as there's no 5-car stop sign, will be at the 8-car stop sign. As we depart from Haslemere, don't forget that the starting speed limit is 85 miles per hour and we're starting on an uphill 1 in 80 gradient. So as I apply power, slightly harder than usual, it's to ensure that we don't roll back as we depart from this station. Although the starting speed limit is 85 miles per hour, it quickly goes up to 90 and there's no actual speed board marking the 90 mile per hour speed limit. You can now see we've got a big gradient change. We're going from going up at 1 in 80 to going downhill at 1 in 100. Here's another of the bugs that I mentioned earlier, as we've just gone through a tree. As we reach the 90 mile per hour speed limit, I'm going to reduce power down to step 1 to just ensure that we don't break the speed limit. You can now see another gradient change as we're now going to start going up at 1 in 250, so I've just applied another step of power to ensure that we don't lose too much speed. We're now passing through Lip Hook and I'm going up to step 3 power as we've lost just slightly more speed than I intended. We are now going downhill on a gradient of 1 in 80, so I've idled the power. And we'll use minimal braking if necessary, just to ensure that we control the speed on this downhill gradient. We're now going through Liss station and the gradient has almost levelled out. We've got about 3 1/3 miles to go to Petersfield. Now going to use step 3 power to try and ensure that we don't lose too much speed. The speed limit will shortly be dropping to 85 miles per hour again. If we were doing the full 90 speed limit, I would say just brake as you see the sign, but as we're already doing about 85, we should be okay. You can now see the sign for the 85 mile per hour speed limit. As we reach the signal just coming up, we've got 1 1/4 miles to go to Petersfield. I'm going to now idle the power at this next overbridge that we're just going under. I'm going to use as the braking point an AWS ramp on the opposite track. You can now see the rear of the signal on the opposite track. Now as we see the AWS ramp for that just coming up, and now going to apply the brakes for Petersfield. Again, as there is no 5-car stop sign here at Petersfield, we're going to aim to stop at the 4-car stop sign. You can see the 4-car stop sign just coming up on the left. And so this is roughly the right stopping point for here at Petersfield. Departing from Petersfield, the starting speed limit is 85 miles per hour, and we've got around 11.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Havant. As you can see, we're now going uphill slightly, which will affect our acceleration rate. However, there will be a drop in speed limit soon, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. We now have a warning for a speed reduction down to 70 miles per hour, so I'm going to shut off power and let the train coast. The warning board itself is just over half a mile from the 70 mile per hour speed limit. We now have another warning for a speed reduction down to 40 miles per hour. And the warning's about 3/4 of a mile from the limit itself. We're now passing the 70 mile per hour speed board. I just used light braking just to ensure that we'd slowed down to the correct speed in time. And the 40 mile per hour speed limit comes into force at the entrance of the tunnel, you can see just coming up ahead. So I'm now going to brake for that limit now. As we go through this tunnel, at 40 miles per hour, I'm just going to coast to allow the train to sail through the tunnel. And at just the other end of the tunnel, the speed limit goes up again to 70 miles per hour. As you can see, we're now passing the 70 mile per hour speed board, and the acceleration point for that board is just past this blue milepost we're just going past now on the left. Now we've gone past that, we can now accelerate up to the 70 mile per hour speed limit. You can now see that there's a big drop in gradient, and we're now going to start going downhill at 1 in 80. So now we're going just above 60 miles per hour. I'm shutting off power to allow the train to coast up to the 70 mile per hour speed limit. If we reach 70 miles per hour, I will then apply light braking to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. You can now see we've reached 70 miles per hour, so I've just applied very light braking just to bring our speed off just a little bit. I've now released the brakes once again just to let the train continue to coast. And the gradient has now shallowed out a bit. We're no longer going down at 1 in 80, and we're now going down at 1 in 110. I've applied a couple of steps of power to bring our speed back up towards 70 miles per hour. And as we reach 70, once again I'll shut off power to continue to let the train coast. The speed limit is now going up to 75 miles per hour. So I'm going to apply full power up to 75, and then we'll go down in power to step 3. I have now idled the power, as we seem to be accelerating slightly more than I was expecting. And so we should hold at around 75 miles per hour. Until the next speed increase, which is just coming up. The speed limit is now going up to 90 miles per hour. However, the speed limit will be very quickly going back down to 70. So what I'm going to do here is I'm accelerating up to 80 miles per hour, at which point I will shut off power and brake back down to 70 again. We're now going through Rowlands Castle. As you can see, the speed limit is now going up to 85 miles per hour. Again, there's no clear landmark as to where to accelerate, but I'd say that at this speed the train will pass the board pretty quickly. I've now applied full power to bring the train up to 85 miles per hour. As we're now approaching 85 miles per hour, I've reduced power to step 2. As you can see, we now have a single yellow signal ahead and a warning for a speed reduction down to 50 miles per hour. So I'm now applying braking, as we've got to assume that the next signal is red until we can see otherwise. The 50 mile per hour warning board is for a speed limit just before we turn onto the West Coastway line at Havant, and the board itself is half a mile from the speed limit. The sign that you can see to the left just now, which has got 2 white lights with a black line going through the middle, is what's known as a repeater. When it's pointing at a level horizontal direction, that means that the next signal ahead is showing a red aspect, and if it is showing a diagonal direction, the black line, as you just saw, that means that the signal is showing a clear aspect. The speed limit around here is just about to go down to 40 miles per hour, so there's no point in accelerating above that. I've just applied very light braking, just to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. And so the line now joining us from the left is the West Coastway line, which goes from Portsmouth to Brighton. We're now entering the station at Havant. Like many of the stations on this route, there is no clear stop marker for a 5-coach train, so I'm going to aim to stop at the bridge you can see just about to go over us. I'm going to stop just as we're going under that bridge. Departing from Havant, the starting speed limit is 40 miles per hour, and we've got about 6¼ miles to go to the next stop, which is Fratton. As we reach 40 miles per hour, I'm going to shut off power and let the train coast. And as you can see, the speed limit is now going up to 70 miles per hour, and we can accelerate at this signal just coming up. Now that we've passed the signal, we can accelerate up to the speed limit. And then the speed limit will shortly be going up once again to 85 miles per hour. We're now passing through Bedhampton. The speed limit is now 85 miles per hour, and will remain so for about 2 or 3 miles until we have the next speed reduction. As we reach the 85 mile per hour speed limit, I will shut off power and let the train coast. We now have a warning for a speed reduction down to 60 miles per hour, and the warning is half a mile from the limit itself. As we reach this next signal, I'm now braking lightly for the 60 mile per hour speed limit. We're now in the 60 mile per hour speed zone, and now as you can see the speed limit is quickly going back up, this time to 80 miles per hour. The speed limit has now gone up again, this time to 85 miles per hour, and we're now going through Haslemere station. As we reach 85 miles per hour, I'm going to once again shut off power. We now have a warning for a speed reduction down to 40 miles per hour, which is 3/4 of a mile from the limit itself. And I'm going to brake for that at the next signal just here. Now that we've passed the signal, I'm applying the brakes to number 2 on the brake gauge, which should slow us down about right. Now that we've slowed down to 40 miles per hour, I will just leave the power in idle to let the train coast. We are now coming up on Fratton, which is our next stop. As this right-hand curve now sharpens, I'm now going to apply the brakes for the station here at Fratton. You can now see the platform just coming up, and the stopping point is at the other end of the platform. So here at Fratton, the aim is to stop just before the signal that you can see just now. Departing from Fratton, the starting speed limit is 40 miles per hour, and we've got just under a mile to go to the next stop, which is Portsmouth and Southsea. Now as we reach the 40 mph speed limit, I'll shut off power to allow the train to coast. The speed limit will shortly be dropping down to 25 mph. You can now see the 25 mph speed board just coming up, so I'm applying the brakes to slow us down for that speed limit now. And in a short distance the speed limit will be dropping further to 15 mph. Portsmouth and Southsea actually has some bay platforms which you can see off to our right there, and we're going to the through platforms on the left which lead to Portsmouth Harbour station. Now slowed for the 15 mph speed limit, coming into Portsmouth and Southsea. And as we enter this 15 mph speed limit, we're actually starting to go uphill at 1 in 67, so we have to be careful not to lose too much speed. Again, with no clear 5-car stop sign. You can see there's the 4-car stop sign just coming up on the right there. We're going to stop at the platform sign just after that. Departing from Portsmouth and Southsea, the starting speed limit is 15 mph, and we've got just over 3/4 of a mile to go to the next stop, one final stop, which is Portsmouth Harbour. So as we reached 15 mph, I shut off power to allow the train to coast. Though as you can see, the speed limit is quickly going up to 40 mph. We probably won't be able to get to that before the next speed reduction. We can accelerate up to the 40 mph speed limit at the end of this fence on the left just here. Now that the fence is ended at this bridge, we can now accelerate. However, it's only 1/4 of a mile before the speed limit drops down to 20 mph. You can actually see the 20 mph speed board just ahead, so I'm shutting off power and I'm now braking down for that speed limit. We're actually going down at 1 in 91 into Portsmouth Harbour station, so we've got to use the brakes to control the speed. As you can see, the speed limit's now going down to 15 mph, so I've just braked to ensure that we've slowed down for that. And as you can see, we're now entering the station here at Portsmouth Harbour. So here we are, arrival at Portsmouth Harbour. Thanks for watching and I hope you've enjoyed the video.